Are you scared at all?
Yeah, they're frightening, but I'm just going to stay strong regardless of the circumstances.
The fact that we were all together, some 50,000 strong today, bolstered a lot of people and made them feel like they had support. Everybody had each other's backs.
Rebel news, your terrorist news, your Zionist news.
Ezra Levant here at the March for Israel in one of the Jewish neighborhoods of Toronto. You can see there are hundreds of police, some of them with serious riot gear, because although, I don't know, I would estimate 100,000 Jewish people marched through this neighborhood, and most of these apartments are heavily Jewish, the pro-Hamas side thought they would attend and provoke, dispute, interrupt, and the police have the job of trying to keep the two sides apart. I wonder, though, if the police would be so equal about it if a Jewish group tried to, I don't know, go into the University of Toronto pro-Hamas encampment, or had a counter-protest to one of the pro-Hamas marches that have sometimes turned violent in Toronto. I don't want to knock the police today. This is the most enforcement they've done in 8 months. I think one of the reasons is it's a high-profile official Jewish march that's been happening for 55 years straight. But on the other hand, since when can a mob of 100 masked thugs simply take over private property? I mean, that's not a park, that's not a sidewalk, and the reason I mention that is because you might recall during the lockdowns and during the trucker convoy, police would use any and all laws to sweep off the streets and into the jails anyone who dared to protest. Every single one of them is on private property, and I guess that's fine with the cops, because what are they going to do? Arrest some Hamas thugs? If they did, it would be the first time in 8 months. Most of these police are Toronto police, but you can see there's a York regional policeman dressed in gray there with a pretty serious anti-riot weapon. They're not messing around. I'm not sure how this happened. I know that the Toronto Police Service had reserved an area for the pro-Hamas protesters. I don't know how that sort of slipped through them. Again, I will give the police credit. There's got to be 100 of them surrounding the Hamasniks, and you'll see one thing about those Hamas people. The number one thing they have in common is they're wearing a mask. And I'm afraid that as a society, we normalized mask wearing during the lockdowns. Heretofore, wearing a mask was considered you had something to hide. You were a bank robber. You were doing something nefarious. Terrorists wore balaclavas. Well, that's what they're doing here. I think that we need to bring back the denormalization of masks. Show your face, especially if you're at an illegal protest on private property. For 8 months, Toronto has been one of the worst cities in Canada in terms of not just anti-Semitism, but law breaking. And there's a difference. Anti-Semitism is when you hate a Jew. And obviously those masked men and women behind me flying the flags of Palestine, or in some cases over the last 8 months, flying actual terrorist flags, they hate Jews. It's no surprise. They come from countries where anti-Semitism is endemic. We don't screen or qualify our immigrants in any way for social fit. And if you bring in people from hateful pockets of the world, you import their ideas too. It's not the anti-Semitism that I think is the practical way to attack the problem, but rather the law breaking. What I'm talking about over the last 8 months has been violence, death threats or other threats of violence, trespass, mischief, things like shooting a Jewish day school mere blocks away. Those are actual crimes. They're animated by anti-Jewish hate, but the problem there is the crimes themselves. Yet, bizarrely, these repeated crimes, some of them are of a trivial nature, perhaps it's trivial to have them trespassing. I don't think the folks working at that gas station would regard it as trivial today. But I think the number one problem is that there has been a lack of police enforcement. In fact, you might recall a few months ago there was virtually a day-long pro-Hamas rally outside a Jewish synagogue in North Toronto, and police stood by as concierges. They didn't do a damn thing. In fact, when one frustrated Jewish local tried to do something, he was the one who was arrested. That's the problem. It's like James Q. Wilson's broken windows theory. You break one window and you don't fix it, people get the idea that we accept broken windows around here. If you have masked Hamas supporters blocking roads, harassing Jewish passersby, people get the idea that that's the new normal now. The Overton window has shifted. We're no longer Toronto the good, but a city seething with hatred that if these cops weren't here, they would be breaking into violence against the Jewish marchers.
We're just here to protect the people, help out whenever it's needed.
Keeping eyes for our parents, set of eyes out, just to make sure.
And all these lads all the way down there with you?
Yes, we are, yep.
All right. People of different backgrounds, looks like.
Yes, yes.
So you're private security is what you're saying?
Exactly. We're here to help, just help around as much as we can,
Okay, nice to meet you, thanks.
Nazi, Nazi, go back home! Palestine is not your home! Nazi, Nazi, go back home! Palestine is not your home! Nazi, Nazi, go back home! Palestine is not your home! Nazi, Nazi, go back home! Palestine is not your home!
I want to show you the contrast. There's a stylistic contrast. Look up here, for example. These are marchers who have finished the march and they're going home. I don't see any masks. Well, maybe 1 in 100 wears a COVID mask. You see men, women, and children, babies even. I see Canadian flags. I see a lot of Israeli flags. I see no terrorist flags. And I think the tone, the mood, if I can read it just with my eyes, is a little bit sober, given that you have Hamas flags in this Jewish neighborhood. But I would call it fairly positive. I don't know if I can use the word friendly. Maybe I find them relatable because I'm a Jewish person from Toronto too. But then look over here. Look at those carrying the Palestinian flags. I don't see a single Canadian flag over there. I don't even hear English language right now. They're chanting in Arabic. Lord knows what they're saying. And the chief characteristic of them is they're covering their face. And I don't think it's for COVID. I think it's because, first of all, they know they're breaking the law. And second of all, they want to be intimidating. They want to bring the Hamas style here. I mentioned earlier that masks are something that terrorists have used for decades to instill fear and to hide their true nature. What do you make of all this?
It's amazing. It's unreal. I never saw something like this. And my daughter, she's the policeman. And I'm Israeli. And I never thought something like this can happen,
Well, I don't think there are street protests for Hamas in Saudi Arabia or in the United Arab Emirates or in Bahrain or Oman. Why are there pro-terrorist protests in Canada but not throughout the Arab world?
Because Canada is a democracy country. You can do it. In the Arab countries, you cannot do it. You can go to jail and you are disappeared. But in democracy countries, you can do as long as you don't go over the law.
Well, they're on private property there. Is that over the law?
Well,
how do you feel about immigration? Do you think, my view is that a lot of these folks over there are from countries where anti-Semitism is normal, and they've come here to bring their ancient hatreds with them.
Well, I think the immigration have to do a better job. Who you bring in? What is the past of these people? Who are they?
We don't ask any of those questions.
This is one of the problems, but it's not only Canada problem. All the Western countries, they have the same problem, and the problem just grows.
Yeah.
Only grows.
Right. Nice to talk with you. Thank you. Hi, what's your name?
Jennifer.
And what do you make of all this, Jennifer?
It's Canada, Stan. I don't understand. They don't take a day off. They want everyone to listen to them, but they won't listen to anyone.
Well, who do you think's paying for them?
Oh, we know. There's all these organizations. Stephen Crowder just did an expose on them, coming from Muslim Brotherhood and Heart to Hearts and all these underground organizations. They're being paid to be here. And those Nakari Jews, they're being paid to be here too.
I think they are. Like, look at that guy there. Look at the guy on the bongos. I mean, other than the bongo, which is a North American affectation, he could be in Gaza. And so either they're doing a little bit of cosplay, dressing up in terrorist costumes, which is possible, or maybe they're just testing the limits. How far can they go? I mean, protests on private property, threats, shooting up Jewish schools. What will finally wake Canadians up and make people say, hold, enough? This was a Jewish march that happens every year, and 100 masked men and women on either side are here simply to shout it down. But you doubt if the cops weren't here, it would be rougher than that. As you know, earlier this year I went to Columbia University to use my own eyes to see who the protesters were there. I went to another New York university called the Fashion Institute of Technology. What I found at both of those places is that the majority of protesters at those elite universities are spoiled, rich, white kids who were acting out against dad or just being woke. But this is a very different crowd, isn't it? I'd say it's 95% people who have come to Canada and come quite recently. They still have their accent from their homeland. And so it's a different kind of hatred. What I saw at Columbia was more theoretical, was more Marxist, was more really woke, avant-garde academics. But what I see here is not intellectual, it's tribal. It's what you would see 100 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, an ancient hate that we have brought into the heart of our own cities. I can't tell. Oh, I see a drone overhead. I see a drone. Did you catch it? There's another drone up there. Now, we use drones at Rebel News, but the drones we use are so small, they're legally classified as a toy. Not that drone. That's a big drone. I'm quite sure that drone is a police drone. Same with that one over there. And look, if you can see it, on the top balcony in that apartment, it's behind the Israeli flags right now, but it looks like there's a spotter. There's a couple of cops on that top balcony. Now, my experience is that police would be looking for two different things. One is just to make sure there's no rough and tumble, elbows up, pushing and shoving, no punching. But the other is much more serious. The real risk of a terrorist attack. If you bring tens of thousands of Jewish men and women and children into a concentrated place, and you allow the rhetoric of genocide from the river to the sea, even if only 1 in 1,000 people chanting it actually means it, well, in a city like Toronto, you could have 10 or 20 actual terrorist cells. So yes, the police so far have simply engaged in crowd control, keeping the two sides apart. But don't think that that balcony and those eyes in the sky aren't also looking for a mass casualty terrorist event. Otherwise, why would they be hiding their faces and chanting the chants of Hamas?
Rebel news, you terrorist news, you Zionist news, fuck you. Fuck you. You guys are fucking racist. Rebel news, you fake fucking news.
I'm shy.
You don't need to be nervous, but shy's okay. What's your name?
My name's Dunny.
And why are you here?
I'm here to support Israel, of course.
And how do you feel about these Palestinian protesters wearing masks?
It's honestly embarrassing. The nonsense people.
Hi. Keep it safe.
Thank you. Are you scared at all?
Yeah, they're frightening, but I'm just gonna stay strong regardless of the circumstances.
You go to school in the neighborhood here?
No, I go to Western University.
And how's it at Western?
I wasn't there the past year because I was studying abroad, but my friends are there, and it's honestly like upsetting that people couldn't even go into classes, into the library where they need to study. It's just not how it should be, especially when it's like disrupting our education. But we move, you know. We gotta stay strong. We gotta stay strong to who we are. And I'm Israel Chai.
Well, look who we bumped into here, Sue-Ann Levy, our friend from True North, who also is just a woman about town. I have a secret hope one day you'll run for mayor. How are you, Sue-Ann?
I'm great. What a great event.
It's great, but I also feel like if these police were not here right now, there would be fists and maybe knives.
Thank goodness for the police. They took it very seriously, and I think for once they took this whole thing, and the security was excellent all through the entire route.
And how do you think the spirit of the Jewish community is? Is it down in the dumps? Is it scared? Is it hopeful? Is it defiant? How would you describe the mood?
Well, I think the capture of the 4 hostages yesterday really helped the mood of the community, the release of the hostages, I should say. And I think the fact that we were all together, some 50,000 strong today, bolstered a lot of people and made them feel like they had support. Everybody had each other's backs.
It was miraculous, especially that young woman who who was on the front page of all the papers. To have her freed is incredible. Great to see you, Sue-Ann.
Great to see you, Ezra.
All right, Sue-Ann Levy from True North. Well, I'm going to do some more journalism, and we've got a huge team here today. David Menzies, Sarah Stock, a big support team. So we'll have more videos in the days ahead. Be sure to go to CanadaStandsWithIsrael.com.